speaker once said, "No one has yet fully realized the wealth of sympathy and kindness and generosity hidden in the soul of the child. The effort of every true educator should be to unlock that treasure, to stimulate the child's impulses, and call forth the best and noblest tendencies." When I learned the story of Whitwell Middle School, deep in the heart of Tennessee, and the journey that their young people and their teachers and their town undertook, the generosity, spirit, and kindness that they all possessed became readily apparent. And despite all the innovations that exist that can bring humanity together, we live in a fragmented world. In a world such as this, that's broken at best, it is heartening to know that there are educators that unlock the goodness that resides within their children, that expand the vision of their students beyond the rolling hills of Tennessee, beyond the borders of this nation, and even beyond the shackles of time to learn of humanity's darkest hour, and through that vision, unlock the shared holiness in all of us. Through their journey, one paperclip at a time, they learned the goodness of humanity, and in sharing their story, they enriched our lives as well. We are greatly honored to have this educator who has unleashed humanity's noblest lessons for her students and for us.
Mercy.
Thank you, Linda Cooper, for joining us today. Proverbs teaches the Chokhmah Yibane Bait, Uvifunan Yit Konan, Udaat Hadarim Yimalu Kol Hon Yakar V'Naim. Through wisdom is a house built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge are the chambers filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Thank you, Linda Hooper, for filling the chambers with the greatest of riches. I'd also like to thank those who supported this program through their generosity. First and foremost, the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Resource Center for co-hosting and sponsoring this program with Congregation Shalom, and Nancy and Jim Barnett and the Kennedy Barnett Lifelong Learning Fund, Betty Krostowski, Susie Edinger and the Sanford J. Edinger Memorial Lecture Fund, Bev and Marty Greenberg, Jody and Paul Lowenstein and the Werner Lowenstein Memorial Endowment, and Marilyn Bradshaw. And I particularly want to also thank Carrie Altman for her tireless efforts to enrich our community in so many different ways, but particularly for her dedication to this program. Thank you, Carrie, and to all of our donors. We're going to begin today by seeing a brief 10-minute documentary video that is going to teach us a little bit about the extraordinary experience that these young people in Tennessee undertook and what they have been able to bring not only to their own community but to the world. So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at Congregation Shalom.
We're a community of 1,600 people. We really have no diversity. The Ku Klux Klan was founded only about 100 miles away. One of the hardest things for them to comprehend was that Hitler murdered 6 million Jewish people.
A student said, "What is 6 million? I've never seen 6 million."
In the 1940s, people were paperclips to represent the people who were in the Holocaust at that time.
And they all said, this is the idea.
It began in the school.
Can we write letters to some people and see if they'll send us some paper clips?
Spread to a town.
The whole community is involved in it.
The Times paperclip is in memory of my grandfather.
25,000 pieces of mail.
Something's going on over here.
Across the nation.
I'm sending you one paper clip.
We have some from Tom Hanks, Phil
wonderful small town where you'd like to raise your children. There are about 1,600 people who live here. It's a very loving, very caring community.
Whitwell's a small town in the southern part of Tennessee. We have 2 traffic lights and just a couple fast food restaurants around. We're not a diverse city.
We needed something to teach about tolerance, and I don't think there's been many times in history there's been any more intolerance than happened in the Holocaust. And it fit our needs for us diversity. We could teach about the Jewish culture because there are no Jews in our whole valley, not in our schools. So that's how the project came about. The original goal to collect was 6 million, and we chose 6 million to represent the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust.
Earlier in the year, a typical meeting, we'd have like 10 pieces of mail, and we'd sort through those and count what little paper clips we had. We'd talk about the Holocaust, or we would watch movies or read books. Now that we're getting such overwhelming amounts of paper clips and letters, our main focus on the whole meeting is to get the mail sorted and count the paper clips.
And these kids have done it so much this year, and they've done so much mail. They take each piece of mail very seriously. They read it, and they handle it as if it, were a serious gift that they really treasure.
Shalom. I read on the internet about your assignment and was very moved by the idea of collecting 6 million paper clips in the memory of the 6 million. I look forward to seeing pictures of the completed project. The attached paper clip is in memory of a friend of my grandfather whose name is forgotten.
I think that it's beautiful that they don't know his name and they don't know where his grave is. But I think it's good that they're sending a paper clip in remembrance of him.
A group of survivors are coming to Whitwell. They called us and wanted to know if they could come and share their stories. They don't know what Whitwell is, and they're coming from this huge urban area, and they're a little self-conscious or nervous about it.
My name is Joe. I'm a survivor. I was in Auschwitz for 3 years. I got a number. The number is 124-105. And I'm glad I can come and talk to you guys people. Thank you.
To know that someone would take the time and make the effort to come all the way from New York to talk with them about a project that's important to the children. And we're just glad to have them here.
It is important to me to tell these stories because there are people in the world which are denying that it ever took place.
Almost when the Allies were closing in on the Germans, they put us in order to annihilate us. We were put on a dead march. And we went, usually we marched during the night mostly, so we wouldn't be visible to the general public. Most of us didn't make it. And the Americans, they showed themselves on the horizon. And I ran out of camp, and I was hiding. So I spent the night over there, and I wouldn't dare go out. And I waited till the next day, I had to risk it, and I went out the American weather. And I was a free person to do what but I'm still here. That's the main thing. I want you all to know. I came here to the United States in 1948, and I've been the happiest ever. I want you to know, happiness makes me cry more than anything else.
I never had thought about it this way before, but after I heard glad I am that it's a free country and I have the right to do what I feel and say what I say. And I'll just be much more respectful to it.
When I was finished, they embraced me and hugged and kissed me. They never heard this. So some of them cried because they never heard stories like this here. And they were never in contact with people that experienced it.
And this project isn't going to die no matter how many paper clips we get. And we are going to treat these paper clips like the children have said. One of them said to me, Ms. Hooper, when you touch these, can you feel the souls? Well, yes, you can feel the souls. Because most of them came with a letter that told you about the soul that paperclip represented. And you know, if we accomplish nothing else, we have helped these people find a resting place for something that was important to them.
To me, they're my heroes because they've been through everything. I'm going to take what they've told me and pass it down with my kids to their grandchildren and so on, and to my friends and my family, where they will always remember that this horrible thing happened, and hopefully they can prevent it from ever happening again.
It is now a great privilege and pleasure to introduce Carrie Altman, who with great enthusiasm and grace works diligently to bring people and programs and wisdom to our community. And we are grateful for you, Carrie, and all that you bring to our congregation, as well as to the Holocaust Education Resource Center. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Noah, for hosting us in this beautiful synagogue. Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Altman. I'm a proud board member of both Congregation Shalom and the Nathan and Esther Peltz Holocaust Education Resource Center here in Milwaukee. These two organizations are jointly presenting this program. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here today. In 1998, there was one extraordinary woman with one idea who was about to change the world forever. Linda Hooper is the former principal of Whitwell Middle School in Whitwell, Tennessee. Whitwell is a small town with a population of mostly white, Anglo-Saxon, and Protestant citizens. Ms. Hooper believed that her students needed to learn about the lives and experiences of other cultures, so she inspired her students to learn about the Holocaust. The students couldn't understand the enormity of the number 6 million Holocaust victims. So they decided they needed to collect 6 million of something. After doing some research on the internet, a student discovered that during World War II, some non-Jewish Norwegians wore paper clips on their lapels as a silent protest against the Nazi occupation in Norway. This discovery was just the beginning of the unprecedented Paper Clips Project. I had the wonderful opportunity yesterday to meet Linda at the airport. It took about 1 minute for me to feel the warmth of her heart of gold. It is important to note that today she serves as the town of Whitwell's mayor. It is a pleasure and a privilege to introduce Mayor Linda Hooper, who has demonstrated that the power of one can and did move our world forever.
day. My husband told me last night in Whitwell, Tennessee, it is 90 degrees. So I look forward to seeing 90 degrees. But you have a beautiful city. I had the privilege of going to your art museum yesterday and kind of driving around your lake area, and it's just beautiful. And I appreciate being here. I couldn't see the images, but I could hear, and I thought about all those kids who have participated 1998, and here we are in 2017, and we're still at it. And I expect we'll still be at it a whole lot longer than Linda Hooper will be alive. I want to share with you first some facts that we share with our students when they come to be trained for this project. Now, I'm a firm believer that everybody in here has a mission. Everybody. There is something that you can do to make a better world. There's something every person can do to make a better world. And we start by making our students who live in Whitwell, Tennessee. At the last census, I have become cognizant of the fact that we have 1,720 residents who live in Whitwell, Tennessee. You've got apartment complexes with more people than that. The other thing I've become aware of and have known all my life is that our students, the median income in our community is $26,000. Our median education level is 6.6 years, not degrees, years. And our students, I think about if they can do this, what can you do? But I also think that they need to understand that there's a lot more problems and a lot more needs out there in the world. People have a much harder time than even they might have. 72.5% of our kids live below the poverty line. So we start telling them about some statistics about the world, and I'm going to tell you about them because I think they belong in our story. You know, I got up this morning and I'm reasonably healthy, and you are too, or you wouldn't be here. But there are 1 million people on this planet who will not survive this week. I also know that I have never been imprisoned. I have never been really hungry. Now, I got up this morning and I thought I was hungry, but I wasn't starving. I was not worried about where my food was going to come from. I am not the least bit afraid that anybody's going to torture me. But on this planet, there are 500 million people. That's about 5 times the population of Milwaukee who cannot say that. Now, everybody in here has some little money squirreled away somewhere. I know you do. You've got a little cup somewhere, or a little jar, or a little purse that you've got money hidden in. Probably most of us have money in the bank. You've got a couple of dollars in your wallet. Do you realize that you are among the 8% of the world's wealthiest people? Even our kids have those things. If you can read, be grateful. I think reading is the most important thing any of us can do. But there are 2 billion people who live on this planet who cannot read. In the United States, there are at least 600,000 people right now who are homeless, just in our country. 75% of all the resources in the world, and we are the people who receive these, go to 20% of the people who live on the earth. And 26,000 people die every day from hunger. Children. 1 billion people go to bed every night hungry. And 30,000 children on our globe die every day from lack of medical care. And I say this to remind you, we are all global neighbors. And that's something we emphasize to our students. I don't care where you live on this planet. You can be anywhere in 18 hours. Anywhere on the planet. So whatever happens in Nigeria or Sudan or Syria or South Africa or wherever, that is my neighbor. And I have to be concerned about those people. So that's how we start training our kids. And we say to them this: have you ever thought about how any great movement started? I don't think it started with a conference or a seminar. Now, I'm not saying great things can't come from conferences and seminars, but it started with passion, the passion of one person. Just look across history, good and bad. Look at Hitler. And we always tell kids, look at Hitler. Did he have a big event to begin with? No, not really. Very subtly, he began to influence people. We tell kids all the time, and you need to think. I say to kids, think about what comes out of your mouth in 30-second sound bites. Now think about everything you said today. And I've been really conscious about what I've been saying today because I knew I was going to be here talking to a whole crew of people. So I try to start my day being very positive. But I wonder, as we go about our daily lives, to our children, to our spouses, to our relatives, to the people we work with, to the people that we just come in contact with. Yesterday I was talking to the young woman who served me at the hotel about her life and how she is diligently working to get her college degree while she works this job and has children. And so I think each one of us would do very well, and I tell kids all the time, and if I hear them saying something I don't think they have any business saying, I will say 30 seconds. And they get it. Not a problem at all. So in that 30 seconds, look at it this way. Whatever you said, would you want that on your tombstone? Would you want a plaque somewhere that said, Linda Hooper said this? If you don't, I always tell kids, don't say it. Don't say anything that you don't want engraved somewhere. And try to start saying things that you would want engraved somewhere. You have such awesome power. Everybody in here has influenced somebody. Think about that. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, everybody has influenced somebody. And hopefully everybody in here has influenced somebody for good. Our life is so full of choices. You know, we're constantly making decisions that impact not only our lives, but other people's lives. So, here we were in Whitwell, Tennessee in 1998. And I'm looking around, talking to our parent advisory committee and talking to kids and looking at our location. Now, we live in a valley. It is 125 miles long, and it is 99% white, Anglo-Saxon, and extremely evangelical. I guarantee you they'd have you converted in 30 seconds. No, not really. But, you know, but we're isolated. The nearest town of any size is Chattanooga, and it's about 30 minutes away, and until we got Interstate 24, the only way to get there was a very windy, wiggly mountain road, which we still travel. So I'm thinking, when our kids leave this valley, you know, a lot of those who go to college or go outside the valley, they have a hard time kind of fitting in and being successful. And a lot of times they come back home because, you know, they just couldn't quite. So I found this conference that was going to occur in Chattanooga, and it was sponsored by something called the I Earn Foundation. I don't remember what each of those letters stands for now, but at any rate, that summer, they were having a conference in Chattanooga where they told you how to hook up your high school kids with other high school kids around the country and across the world to study a particular project. Well, I knew that my 8th grade kids and my 7th grade kids and my middle school kids could do whatever a high school kid could do, because I knew they could, and I'd tell them they had to. So now, you got to understand the South, and I think that's true from what I saw in the airport with those cheese things. Football is the next best thing to God, and some people, it is God. So I'll go to the football coach and I said, in June, you're going to the I Earn Foundation's conference in Chattanooga, and you're going to find us something that will do this. Emphasize another culture. Teach people how to not be intolerant, and teach us how to reach out via the internet across the world. So he went, and David Smith, who was our football coach, we play football in middle school big time, I'm here to tell you. He came back and he said, well, I think this will do what you want to do. So I looked at this study of the Holocaust and I said, yeah, I think it will, because it's a totally different way of looking at life. It definitely would teach us the lessons of what happens if you are intolerant and evil and hateful. So let's go to our parent council and see if they're on board. And they got on board. They were tickled pink to do this. They were excited that we were going to be part of an internet study across the world. The next thing I did, because it is the South and we are evangelical, is I went to the Saturday morning breakfast of the ministers. I was the only woman there. And they eat once a month, and it's a big deal, and they decide the fate of the world while they're there. It's the truth. It's the South. It's okay. And I said, gentlemen, you know, I passed out all this literature we're about to study, and this one pastor said, oh, we're going to learn all these things about God's chosen people. And I went, yes! So we never had a problem. Now, we've never, ever, I get this question all the time, so I'm going to answer it right now. We've never had a problem. We've never had anybody question this project. We've never had anybody say it wasn't something you shouldn't be doing. We have never had a problem. Now, I'm not stupid. I know there are people out there that, you know, disagree or think we shouldn't have done it. After all, we live kind of in KKK Central. You know, we're not 100 miles from where KKK was born. But at any rate, so I went to Sandra Roberts and I said, we're going to start this after-school study about the Holocaust, and you're not going to get any money for doing it, and an adult from the family has to come. And so we gave kids the opportunity, 8th graders, and that year we had 40 kids who signed up to come with a parent or an adult from the family. Now, I did all these things with my parent advisory council and the ministerial association, and requiring an adult to come, because I didn't want them to think I was promoting a Jewish conversion experience. So, here we are. It was so wonderful. You can't believe the sharing that went on, the things that the churches talked about, all the good things that happened that year. So the next year we decided we'll do it again. And remember, this is after school, okay? No money for anybody. So the next year we're doing it again, and along about the middle of the first semester, I always have an open door policy when I was a principal. If I was not having a conference that was real serious, the door to the hallway was open. And this young woman comes in and she says, "Miss Hooper, I don't get this. There is no way I can get this. You're telling me that there were 6 million Jews and 5 million other people murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust." She said, "Do you realize there's only 1,600 people who live here? How am I going to get this?" And I said, "Well, what do you propose to do about it? It's not my job to tell you how to learn. It's your job to figure out how to find out what you need to know." She says, "Well, we have to collect something so I can see. We can all see the enormity." And I said, "Well, that's fine. We're not going to collect bottle caps. We're not going to collect pool tabs. We're not going to collect, corn, whatever. It has to be meaningful. It has to either connect to World War II or it has to connect to the Holocaust." She said, "Okay." 2 days later, she's back. She has the letter. She said, "We're going to send this letter out to everybody, and we're going to ask them to send us a paperclip." Now, really? So I looked at her and I said, I told you it had to connect to World War II or it had to connect to the Holocaust. So, a paperclip?" She said, "Miss Hooper, don't you know?" Well, no, I didn't know, and I said so. Joseph Thaler was a Jewish gentleman who is credited with the invention of the paperclip. And don't you know that Norwegians wore these paperclips to protest Nazi policies? Well, no, I didn't know that, but I know it now. So I tweaked her letter a little bit. We registered that project with the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. We sent letters to everybody. Now, I have to tell you about some of the letters we got back. Most of the letters break your heart. We have 132 inch-and-a-half binders of letters from all sorts of people. School people, kids, Islamic people, survivors' families, lots and lots of people. But we have one notebook, an inch-and-a-half, that is from people who say, "Do you not know the Holocaust didn't happen? It's not possible." And most of them have come from the northeastern United States, a couple from Canada, and I think we've got one from the South. Our latest letter was a 3-page lined, the big, like notebook letter size, written in pencil, front and back, full of math about how the Holocaust never did happen. And one of our kids said, "Does this man not have a life? Does he not live in a community with needs? Can't you get him a project?" And I said, "Honey, the ignorant and the evil you will have with you always. It's your job to overcome that evilness and that ignorance. That's what your job is." We still get letters and paperclips, by the way. We quit counting at 30 million. They would come at 5 o'clock in the morning to read letters and respond to letters. We've responded to every letter except the negative letters. Now, they wanted to respond to them, but I said, no. We're not going to waste our time and our stamp and our energy on that kind of response. There's no purpose to it. And they'd come back in the evenings after they had football practice or basketball or music or whatever they were doing, and they would count paperclips till it got dark and read letters and respond to letters. I think about those kids and the kids that have come after them with no resources. A lot of them, when the only really good meal they got was at school. And I think how much effort and time they put into this project and the choices they made. And I asked them, and I would ask you to think, what is your most priceless possession? What is the one thing that you have, or the one person that you know that you value the most? And I didn't ask for answers, because I think that how we choose to live our lives and what we do has such an impact, and each of us has to make our own choices. I think, do we spend our lives, or will we spend our lives? I always say to these kids, will you spend your life encouraging somebody? Will you be out there lifting somebody up? Or will you do what the Nazis did to the Jewish people, constantly putting them down, constantly separating them from every good thing in life, constantly being evil? And what do we do? You know, how do we live our lives? We have so much time that we need to be spending finding what needs to be done. I don't know what needs to be done in Milwaukee. I don't know what you need to do for the world. But I say to these kids, and I would say to you, there's something out there that you need to be doing. Why aren't you? Our kids have taken on so many projects. They help with the local food bank. They've done so much work at our local park. They read and tutor to younger kids, even in the summertime when they don't have to come in and do that. They visit our local nursing home, assisted living. They play cards with them. They do things with them. This project has helped them to realize that, number one, we all have prejudices. I don't care what you say, you've got one. My prejudice is people that don't do anything. And I just want to kick them and make them do something. And we put people in little groups. I had this conversation today with a guy about groups. You know, we have little sections. Here are the African Americans, here are the Jewish folks, here's the Methodists, here's the Baptists, here's the whatever, you know. And we stereotype. We decide that because you are African American, because I am a white-haired female, because you are Jewish, that we are different. But the bottom line is, Yankee or Southern, Jewish or Protestant, God created us all. If you are disrespectful, and this is a point I make over and over and over to our kids, if you are disrespectful to any human being, you are disrespectful to the God who created you. I don't have to like you. And if you know me well, you know I have some pretty strong opinions. But as a Christian, I am commanded to love you and respect you and care about you. And we can't ever forget about that. We have to look at people who use their personal power and their personal choices to make life so much better. We look at Raoul Wallenberg. We look at Mother Teresa. We look at the people of Chambon. We look at Helen Shenosh. And we think, can we be that? Life is a choice. I have a couple of things I want to share with you. One is a story. I got too far over from the crack, I realized, and you couldn't hear me, so I backed up. One is a story I'd like to share with you. about two young boys. Everybody in here's got a best friend, haven't you? And you share stuff with them, and you do stuff with them, and you tell them your secrets. Well, in March of 1906, there were two boys born in the same city as in Germany. One was David, and he was Jewish, and the other was Adolf, and he was Lutheran. And they became best friends. They played together. David taught Adolf some Yiddish and some Hebrew, and they promised to be best friends for the rest of their lives. They would never forget each other. But their friendship got interrupted when the family of Adolf moved to Linz, Austria. It was years and years and years later when they met again. David was a prisoner at a concentration camp in Poland. Now think what he looked like. He had that mattress-ticking shirt on. He was ragged. He was emaciated. He was nasty. He probably had fleas. Only God knows how he looked. But Adolf was now an officer in the dreaded Gestapo. He had his shining uniform. He was an SS major. He recognized his friend, and Adolf Eichmann knew what was going to happen to David. In his hand, he held the power. He made the choice. He could have saved David's life. David was slated for murder. Adolf Eichmann did not save the life of his friend. He made his choice. Today is as far in the future as any of us can go, and we are all making choices. You may think you're not making the same choice of life and death, but you are, in the way you treat people, in the way you care for people, in the way you look for ways to make life better for people. You have the power, the one-person power, and the choice to do so much. Gertrude Hildreth Hausmann is kind of my hero. Never met her. I've never seen any of her work except this poem. I've talked with her son, and he told me a great deal about her, and I think she would have been a soulmate of mine. But she wrote a poem which is my mantra, and I try to read this every single day because I think what it has to say is very important. I came into this world without being asked. Now, I don't know about you, but my mama sure didn't ask me, Linda, you want to be born? She was 17. I'm not sure, she would have thought about that. When the time comes for dying, I will not be consulted. But between those boundaries of birth and death lies a dominion of choice. I can be a doer or I can be a dreamer. I can be a lifter or I can be a leaner. I can speak out or I can remain silent. I can extend my hand to you in friendship or I can just look the other way and ignore you. I can feel the suffering of others or I can be callous and insensitive. These are my choices. And they're the choices that every person in this room will make at some point. And it is in the choosing that my measure as a person and your measure as a person will be determined. And I would say this to you. If a community like Whitwell, Tennessee, we don't got any money, we sure don't have an education, and we sure are off the beaten track. if they can create one clip at a time, get a rail car, fill it with paper clips, read letters, work, teach, be concerned. I think that all of us can work together and create a world where acceptance and respect and love become the rule and not the exception. That's my hope, and I hope it's your hope, and I'm done. I didn't faint. That's what's amazing. Whew.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Shai Pimnik, the Executive Director of the Nathan and Esther Felt Holocaust Education Resource Center, and we'd like to proceed. Thank you, Linda.
You got to come to the... You have to, because
All
they're...
I wanted to say is that we will proceed to the Q&A.
So if you have any burning question, now is the time.
We have microphones on every side.
Go ahead, honey.
I'm interested to know what happened to some of the original kids
Okay.
in this project, because the whole purpose was to really open them up, help them succeed, to live in a multicultural world of acceptance. I'm very curious about what they're doing now.
How about if I tell you about the two young people you saw in this little clip, okay? What she is asking is, what happened to these kids? Well, they're turning, those two young people that you saw in the clip are turning 30 this year. The young woman has 3 daughters. The young man is not married. He has a dog. I told him he needed a wife. He told me the dog was easier. Okay, guys, you better be careful now. When we moved, where the car is in the movie was at our old school, and our parents campaigned and voted for a half-cent sales tax so we could have a brand new school, get the car moved and get it under cover. And we rededicated, and when we did, she brought her, at that time, daughter, and went in that car. I'm your typical Southern woman. I was born with a faucet behind my eyes. And she proceeded to tell her daughter, who was, I think about 3 at that time, how she was to conduct her life. Last week we had a group of Jewish folks from Rockville, Maryland, just right outside of D.C., and we had an event with them in a Seder. And the young man was there to talk about his experiences and to share with that group. They definitely are using their paperclip to change people one person at a time. I see that every day, things they do that make me just glow. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
On the other hand, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, not only in the world,
Yes, ma'am.
but certainly here in America. And it's very, very dispiriting. My grandchildren's grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, as was their grandmother. And I'm wondering what some of these young people and the children who must know this is going on, what they think of it in terms of the project. And I said, wonder if you find it very dispiriting what's going on right now.
To say I find very dispiriting what's going on in our country right now is an understatement. You cannot separate people. You cannot separate people out and make them different just because they don't measure up to your ideas of, where people ought to be and how they ought to act. But the bottom line is this: I forget being dispirited. Stand up, speak out, encourage people. Don't just, At my house, we quit watching the national news for a while because that just irritates you sometimes. And the bottom line is you got to keep your spirits up and you got to keep battling. Write an article. Call up somebody. You've got people in Congress. You've got people, work for term limits. Okay, that's political. I'll hush. Yes, ma'am. Oh, let me tell you the story of the car. Yeah, that's a good one. See, I could tell stories all day, and I have to think. I was kind of timing myself, and I think I ran over, didn't I? Oh, it's okay. All right, here's the bottom line. We registered the project with the National Holocaust Museum in Washington. Two German journalists who are stationed in Washington see this, and they decide they'll come down and check us out. So they checked us out, and they kind of got excited and fell in love with our kids. So they go back to Washington, and they speak to a journalist with the Washington Post and, get this article written. And we're having a kind of a dinner one night, and let me give you a look. Are there any principals in this room? Oh, good. Oh, one? Oh, well. Ignore this, okay? This applies only to me. So we're having this dinner, and we're talking about all these paper clips we have, and what are you going to do with them? Somebody said, oh, we're going to melt them down. I said, oh, you're not. They represent souls who have been through a fire. We're not melting them down. And I said, let me tell you about principals. They get pushed up because they can't teach, so they become administrators. And they get all these hairy ideas that they expect everybody else to carry out. So I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had an authentic German transport car? And we put these paper clips in there, and we dedicate it, and we transform it from a symbol of death and hate to a symbol of hope and love. Now, what did I think? We're going to just go out on Craigslist and get a car? Well, Peter and Dagmar Schroeder said, oh, this is the great idea. We will do this. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, we will do this, So they travel around the United States because they'd heard that somebody in Arizona had one. Then they travel around Europe. Took 3 weeks of unpaid leave from their job to do this. They found this car in the former Eastern Democratic Republic of Germany. It was in a private railroad museum. They convinced the guy to sell it. It had its papers. We know it's authentic, the whole, certification process. They convinced their friends and family to donate enough money to purchase it. They convinced the German railroad to move it from Robel to the port of Cuxhaven. They convinced the German Navy, all at no charge, to bring it from the port of Cuxhaven to the port of Baltimore, because the German Navy had sold some relics, tanks, that kind of thing from the war, and they were sending them to a museum here. And I think probably the greatest miracle is when it got here in the port of Baltimore, they convinced the Teamsters Union to unload it for free. Now, if that's not a miracle, then the young man you see in the movie, his mom happened to work for a trucking company in Chattanooga, and she convinced them to, it couldn't travel on rails to Whitwell, so she convinced them to bring it by truck to Whitwell, Tennessee. I tell people all the time, this is not our project. Have you ever felt like you were the hands of something far greater than you? We just happen to be the hands. And it's been a wonderful thing to have a hand in this project. All right, who else has a question? Somebody over here.
So